That's right. And commenting on that the African conception of divinity is that divinity permeates all of existence.
Yes.
I want to say that when we look at the many gods that seem to manifest in African cultures, a lot of people are looking at it with a Western European conception of what is actually occurring. So what I mean by that is I've been taking the time to study the Ru Nupert Emheru, to read it in its language, to measure it with what the translators are saying about it in the English language, and then to take the step to say, let me arm myself with understanding the language so that I can see. In the Ru Nupert Emheru, Asar is described in many places, as well as Re or Ra, as manifesting, his essence is manifesting through all of the Neteru. So that when we speak of Jehuti, we're really speaking of a manifestation of the divinity. When we're speaking of all of the Neteru and Neteret, we are speaking of the different aspects of the Godhead. So with that thought in mind, I want to say that to people who wrestle with that, which is in essence African conception, if you take the light of the sun as it crosses through a stained glass window, for instance, like a church, a stained glass window would represent a window of many colors.
Like a prism.
As that light comes through and hits that prism, to those on the outside, the prism and the light that's hitting it, you're seeing several different lights. But it's the same light when you get closer to the source.
Right.
So the thing is, the more you study African spirituality, the more that you understand the source, the more you understand that the source has many manifestations.
Absolutely.
We read this in the Bible as well. These are the epithets.
That's the fundamental basis of African culture.
Right.
Fundamental basis. And there was a little thing I do in one of my speeches that said, there was the great light. Mm-hmm. And then the great light gave birth to itself in multiple smaller lights. Mm-hmm. But each of the small light contained the totality of the essence of the great light.
That's right.
Though they had their own peculiar expression.
That's right.
And so, in the language, I don't read the Medranecha. Mm-hmm. But I got something most people don't got. I've walked with the divine. I've had 3 clinical deaths. I've seen what most people haven't seen. And I know what most people
Professor Smalls, what you said was so important. I'm going to need you to say that again. You had 3 what?
Clinical death where I'm pronounced
I hope
dead,
everyone is hearing
and
that.
I'm no longer here, and then I come back here. I had it on 3 occasions. Once in Kemet, once during my Yoruba initiation, and once when I left the Holy Pilgrimage in Mecca. Mm. And what is the implication of all 3? I'm still, after all these years, trying to learn from those experiences. Mm-hmm. But I knew the dialogue I had with ancestors and even divine in one of those instances. That made me who I am. It put me on the path I ended up on. It protects me on that path against any force.
Yes.
So I don't see in any of the language where any of those things are called gods. Mm-hmm. First thing. Mm-hmm. These are qualities and attributes of gods. Mm-hmm. These are the expressions of the divine essence having the peculiar experience. When you eat collard greens is the sun that is manifested in a way it gives you an optimum amount of iron for your system. You eat carrots, it is the sun. The radiation of the sun broken down in such a way you get beta carotene for your eyes. Mm-hmm. And it's like throughout nature. You know, the tree, our sister, our brother, sits there and suck up carbon dioxide so we won't die from our own poison. Mm-hmm. And then flip it and give it us back as oxygen so we can breathe fresh air again. Mm. And so is that not your brother? Is that not your sister? Is that not a part of you? Mm. When a human being spends the day using up all their energy and they're tired, they need to eat. They don't kill another human being. They eat anything else in nature. So we are every and all things at once.
That's right.
You know. So if we really get rid of the arrogance, one thing that I note from so many of the young men and women that I watch on the internet, they don't understand that there's a cleansing that must take place. That cleansing is getting rid of ego, getting rid of arrogance, getting rid of desires, unnecessary desires, getting rid of envy, getting rid of jealousies. These are qualities and attributes that would lead to conflict, quarreling, and violence, and death. And so if you want to really develop a spiritual consciousness, you have to cleanse yourself of the negative quality and attributes that we've gotten from living in an anti-African culture. And then begin to study the Medjugorje, begin to study the Orishas, the Obosum, the Loas, not as gods and making statues and following worshipers. That's foolishness. That's where we lost our way.
That's right.
But understanding them as qualities and attributes capable of being developed in the human character, capable of being developed in the social ecology you build as your neighborhood and your community, capable of being developed in the relationship you make with another female, with a female and a male, so you can build a family. Those same quality and attributes are the building blocks of all those institutions. Those quality and attributes we call the Netcharu, we call the Orishas, we call the Abosum, we call the Loas.
That's right.
These are the forces of God. Each one of us are the best of our ancestors' genes, the latest version, and the highest tech model at which we come to Earth.
Clear, cut, and dry, simple. In commenting on that, and then leading up to my very last question for you, from my studies again in the Kemetic texts, what I see when looking at different papyruses for different judgment scenes, depending upon who it is, whomever the deceased is, after he is judged, he becomes Asar. And then even the image painted of Asar is the image of the deceased. So that what even the Kemetic text is portraying is that you are a part of the divinity, which goes back to my earlier description of the man sitting upon a high and exalted throne in the Bible, an anthropomorphic vision of God, which in essence was the prophet himself, seeing himself as God. Because the greatest experience in our spiritual systems is to know that the divinity is within you, that you partake of.